This week on Inside the Headset, we are featuring Steve Steele, the head coach for TF Riggs High School in South Dakota. In this episode, Coach Steele shares about the adjustments that he made in his first few years of coaching, his unique way of repeating success, and his experience in the AFCA 30 Under 30 program. If you like this podcast, be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch new episodes each week. Now, let's get inside the headset with Coach Steele.
Coach Steele, how you doing, man?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, Coach. Well, it's my pleasure to really see eye to eye. I know we've emailed over the years as you were a former 30 under 30 guy prior to my role here at the AFCA, and so I hadn't got opportunity to shake your hands or see you, but definitely, super excited about the opportunity to sit down and chat with you. Now, let's kind of dive into this thing, okay? This has been my popular question here over the last few podcasts, is what was that moment that you knew you wanted to be a ball coach?
Yeah, I kind of think it was my high school coach, and then really my college offensive line coach, Aaron Hafner, was a really big role model for me and making me want to be a coach and kind of encouraging me to take that step. I'm always kind of knew I wanted to be a teacher, and that kind of paired well with it, obviously being a coach and a teacher, getting that undergrad degree as a teacher, and then testing it out and GAing. That was what he'd really encouraged me to do, was seek out a GA and get that education master's. If it didn't work out, and then you're still able to go into that. But once I gave it a shot, I fell in love with it and knew it's what I wanted to do.
And so you go and play William Penn, and you don't just go play. You're actually a pretty good player over there, is what it sounded like, in a Big All Conference. You guys had produced a pretty good offense, 4-year letter winner for the program. Did some good stuff. The hardest part, obviously, is, and I say this time and time again, is the hardest part about getting into the profession is getting that first gig. Regardless what kind of accolades you have, getting that first gig. How did you go about getting started in the profession? What was your kind of course of action to let people know you want to be in the biz?
Yeah, I think a lot of it really came down to, my coaches reached out for me and everything. I was on Football Scoop, was on the AFCA job board, and just kind of shooting out as many emails and feelers as I could. And I think kind of playing, especially in the role that I did, as an offensive lineman, didn't go in and play right away or any of that. But that accepting that role and understanding that, you're just going to do the job. You're not going to have to make decisions. You're not going to have to be the top dog right away. But just going in and being a sponge, learning everything you could. That was a big part of my playing career, was trying to understand everything that I could understand from that coaching side, from the offense and defensive side, learning as much X's and O's as I could. I think that definitely paid off, once you get a couple calls back and a couple emails back and ultimately a couple interviews, just to really understand what you have to go in and do and realizing that no job is beneath you. I think that's the other thing that you've got to do to get in is really embrace that servant role, because, ultimately, even when you get to be a head coach, you're still a servant of people, and you've got to serve the people that you're working for.
So did you actually get any interviews before you got your first job? Did you actually go on an official interview, or was your first gig kind of one of those deals that just was worked out without having to do that?
Yeah, I had a couple interviews that I had, all smaller school GA type jobs. I didn't go for any high school jobs right away because I figured I could get a master's paid for, and then I'd be better off if I did go to high school to get it out of there. So I had a couple interviews and a couple, I guess it was kind of a phone and Skype back then. It wasn't so much Zoom yet.
Yeah.
But it was a Skype interview, and then I had a couple in-person ones. And, I think that's the other, kind of really jumping ahead. I think interview experience is crucial.
Absolutely.
Because every single interview is different, and every role in an interview is different and different than you'd even imagine when you're preparing for them.
Yeah, so I'm happy you kind of said, verbally said that, so I didn't have to say it. It's like just that experience of having that, such a big deal, and yeah, of course, it's awesome to be able to, have a coach help you get a job. You don't necessarily have to formally get an interview, but at some point in time, you have to sit down and sit across a bunch of coaches and get up on the board. And I've been on multiple throughout my coaching career, and they were all drastically different. Was there anything that you remember from your couple interviews that you had at that point in time that, stood out to you? Maybe you can drop a nugget on, hey, man, if you ever go to an interview, be ready for this or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's very comfortable. You have to be very comfortable in what you know. But I think it's really important to not pretend that you don't know or pretend that you know something you don't know.
Right.
I think everybody's got a pretty good BS meter that you just can tell if someone doesn't really know their stuff.
Yeah.
And being comfortable in yourself enough to just be like, hey, I don't know that yet, but I'd love to learn it. That's why I want this position, because I want to grow. I want to get better. I want to learn, as opposed to kind of walking in and pretending like you know everything, because, ultimately you're not going to know everything. And when you're starting out, I think that's okay. And no one should no one hiring that position is anticipating someone coming in to know everything. So I think right away that's really important, is being okay to say that I don't know, but I want to learn.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the most important part.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially coming out of college when if you play in college, yeah, a lot of times you learn so much about your offense, and then you learn so much about your defensive guy, and you do learn about what coverage they're in, 3 technique is, fronts, blitzes, all that kind of stuff, and you think you just know so much, and then all of a sudden you get out in these other worlds where, they call things totally different and look at things totally different, and you realize you don't know that. You really just don't know that much. I know that was always my rude awakening into getting into the high school level and to the college level, was that, just when I thought I knew so much, I realized I didn't know much at all. So I appreciate you sharing that. Now, you get the opportunity at Dakota State, and just talk about your first 2 years, because you were a position coach, right? And you coached a position that you were comfortable with. What were some of the big adjustments that you had to make? Just now you're actually coaching the guys. You're what you're doing is slightly different from what you were used to over there at William Penn. What were some of your adjustments that you had to make from being an O-line player to O-line coach?
I think the biggest thing, especially, I guess every position is a little bit different, but at William Penn, we were a triple option. We ran it out of the flex bone. So, you're super heavy in your stance. You're working a lot, almost exclusively on run blocking. You're working releases. You're working cut blocking. You're working a whole different skill set than you're working when you're coming to a little bit more prototypical, a gap scheme or a power scheme or anything like that, where you're in a little bit more balanced stance. You're going to try and throw the ball more. So, even right away, I felt very, very comfortable. I could have gone and taught anyone how to veer release, go up, cut the middle linebacker, filter block, do a lot of those things. But you've really got to study and learn all of those new techniques, because, you can't, it's pointless to teach a veer release if you're not running.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pointless to teach pass pro if you're going to go into a veer offense. So, understanding the offense, but from a technical perspective, is so critical as a position coach, where, as a position coach, that's almost more important than X's and O's, because, even if you don't quite know and understand all the pass routes, coming in, I didn't pass pro a whole lot as a player in college, because we threw the ball 6 to 8 times a game, maybe, and if we were doing really well, we wouldn't throw the ball at all, because we just keep running veer. So, understanding that, I maybe don't need to know all the necessarily routes right away, but I need to know how to coach pass pro and how to coach passing it off, and different calls that are important to the line in that game are important.
Yeah. And so, how old are you right now, Coach? I should have known this beforehand.
33.
33. So as a 33-year-old guy that has a ton of experience now in this profession, I feel like that's super easy to say. But, go back to your 22-year-old self. Were you sharp enough? Did you have enough awareness to, walk in there? And I definitely can see the drastic difference between, offense going to throw the ball, 50% of the time versus, being in, running the triple, and you're running 90% of the time. So I'm sure that some of that stuff was easy, but do you ever look back and be like, man, you know what? I was doing that all wrong, or were you able to have some foresight to kind of know that?
Yeah, I think I've been very fortunate to have some really great coaches in the past. I think a lot of us probably share that in reasons we want to coach. And a couple of people that I've had in the past that had encouraged me to come up with, what are your drills that you're going to live and die by? What are your most important ones? And as a lineman, your first 3 steps are important, regardless of what offense you're running. The 3 steps just change in what you're looking for. So really developing that for the offense that we had, and then having a little note card, that you got in your pocket. That's the most important drills that you have. So that, I think that's another crucial characteristic of coaching that I don't know that I anticipated coming in, but I was happy that I had a coach encourage me with this. Was your ability to just create something out of, if practice is going bad, what are you going to do? Are you just going to keep, if the kids don't get a drill, are you going to keep going on that drill? Are you going to keep fighting them on it? Or are you going to go to something else to change that tempo, change the kind of the momentum of practice? And, being able to improvise a little bit and have a plan to improvise as opposed to just saying, well, this isn't working. What do we do now? I think that really allowed us to get a lot more work done because, then that way maybe you're just going to table a drill for a day and go back and replan that drill out for the next time you're going to do it, but then you've got something to go to in your pocket.
Yeah, so, you rewind back to 2012. This was 2023. You say you're 33. So what, you're 22, somewhere in that age frame, right? And you got a room full of 15, 14 kids, and they're looking at you for the answer. It's a kid that doesn't get it. You need a different drill, you know what I mean? And all at least at this point in time from experience is, what you're taught at Penn, what you kind of did at, I'm going to butcher that name, Novell Catholic Central High School, as a high school player. Did I mess it up?
No, Novell, yeah.
Novell, okay. Yeah, so where did you go? Where did you go to say, you know what, hey, man, this guy's not getting it. I need a different drill. I need a different flavor. I need to find something that's good for pass setting. Where did you go to kind of, sharpen your tools as a young coach?
Yeah, I definitely leaned a lot on my previous coaches from Novell and from Penn. Obviously in season, everyone's so busy that, at times you've got to go online and you got to go and especially today, I think it's even more so than before where you can go on Twitter and find, Hog Football Chat. You can go on and find a chat for anything and find 100 different resources and people that want to talk ball. I think that's a great one. But again, I still think that's the teaching background part. I think definitely helps in that regard.
Yeah.
Because you learn all the different ways that you got to connect with different people, and it's important to understand what kind of learner each kid you have is. Because some kids don't learn on a board. You can't go and draw up a board or a play on a board, and they're not going to get it. Yeah. They might need to see film on it. Some of them might need you to take their hand and legitimately do the drill with them. So, being flexible enough to understand what every kid needs and then be what they need is the most important part.
So at 24 years old, the head ball coach walks in your office and says, come here. And now I don't know how it went down. I'm making that part up, putting some drama on it. But basically the head coach comes in and says, you're going to be our offensive coordinator. My big question is, what did you do at 22 and 23 years old as a position coach that gave a head ball coach the confidence to come in there and say, you're the guy that needs to be running this offense? What do you think it was?
I think a lot of it was, just having that attention to detail and that the want to know, the want to learn. It was never pretending you have the answers. It was always, well, why do we do this? Can we do this better? Who else does this? Where can we study? Where can we learn? Where can we grow? And just that desire to continually always find new ways to do things, new ways to get better. I think looking back, that was probably one of the reasons that happened, and that actually happened at the AFCA convention is in Indianapolis. Then we were out to dinner, and then that's when he told me that was going to happen, and that drastically changed my plans for the next day on who I was going to go see, because then I kind of put the offensive line stuff to the side, and I'm like, all right, well, I got to get into some OC sessions to figure out, the big picture and the organizing and a lot of that part of it. So very memorable time, but I think that was probably why.
Yeah. Well, I always find it interesting, regardless what side of the ball you play or what position you play, it's like, there's probably a few positions that got some good carryover, like a linebacker has a pretty good understanding what's going on with the secondary behind him and has a good understanding of what's going on with the defensive lineman. A quarterback obviously knows what's going on both in the run and pass game. But sometimes you look at a receiver, man, they have zero clue what the O-line is doing, and vice versa, right? As a player. So, were you sharpening your understanding of like the pass game in those 2 years, or was that a part of that conversation when he tells you you're the OC, or were you like, man, hey, I gotta go figure out what these receiver guys are doing out there all the time?
Yeah, I actually think the best preparation I would say that I had for pass game coming from an O lineman in college that a team that didn't even throw the ball. So it's not even like he had routes that I could have learned really.
Right.
What was breaking down film, as a GA, you get put in the grinding position of having to dub all the film. And I guess now there's businesses and stuff that'll do some of that for you.
Yeah.
But when I was a GA, I actually did breakdowns for both sides of the ball, and understanding the coverages helped me understand the routes. So I would almost say that I learned coverage concepts before I learned route concepts a lot of times. And then from that, you kind of understand how the routes are built to attack the different coverages. But I think a lot of that came just from being assigned to sit down and go through and just, this is cover 2, this is cover 2, this is cover 4, this is cover 3, this is cover 6, and just entering that into film so many times over the course of that GA year really showed me, okay, so this is what that looks like. How do we beat it?
Yeah.
And then you can draw stuff off on the other side of the ball off of that. And that's my favorite thing about offense is just its unlimited creativity. It's unlimited creativity. That's kind of where we're at now. But all that definitely started the GA year, having to kind of go through and enter all of that into film.
Well, you got my gears spinning a little bit, man, because you may mention that, and I actually wasn't aware of this. I'm probably late to the game since I'm not, as actively involved with some of the breakdown stuff. But I'm familiar with the huddle assist that you can submit the film to, and I know there's more and more platforms that are coming out to basically take that workload off of you. And I am such a strong proponent of like technology, things that it's going to help you be more efficient. And so like philosophically, I would be all over that. But I go back and look at my coaching career. It's like, man, sitting there and breaking down film, man, that made me such a good coach. There was so much stuff I learned probably doing that I never had to ask anybody. Just been able to watch the film, kind of like as you were alluding to. So just out of curiosity, like with the emergence of these type of systems, isn't it still important for guys to probably early in their career have those opportunities to sit down and break down film themselves rather than relying on that?
Yeah, I really think there's so much value in that. And I mean, I know Bill Belichick's a huge proponent of padding and all that kind of stuff where, I don't think he cares what's available. You're padding if you're a new guy, and I think that especially right away is so important because again, no matter what you are, with the exception of potentially a quarterback and whatever your Sam linebacker who might be, or whatever your main linebacker that calls your defense.
Yeah.
The exception of that, I mean, there's no better way to get the full picture of everything. And even on the other side of the ball is where I think there's more value. I think as an offensive coach, doing that for a defense is what really, I think, changed my mind because then all of a sudden you have a whole new understanding of defense when you're plugging all this stuff in. And I think it'd work the opposite too. If you're a defensive coach, having to plug in formations, concepts, blocking schemes, and all that stuff, that's going to teach you so much more than, anything else would.
Amen. I got me sidetracked there, but I definitely think that's worth the dialogue. Now I'm going to brag on you real quick. You were 2 years as the O-line coach there at Dakota State. You're promoted 2 years as offensive coordinator. During your time, you broke school records for total offense, rushing yards, first downs, points scored as an OC. 2016 offense finished in the top 10 of all of NAIA, and you helped the team to first two winning seasons in over 20 years. That's if you're 30, I'm probably not even going to highlight that kind of stuff. But man, you're just such a young guy. Let's talk a little bit about that growth and the confidence that you had to have to be a young guy who has not seen everything, who did not know everything, who probably didn't, to certain facets, maybe didn't even know everything about your own offense and your own personnel. Like how did you overcome, maybe some of the setbacks of being an extremely young guy to be able to be so productive offensively?
In a lot of ways, I almost think that was a huge benefit because, and I think the other part of it is that we didn't really copy places. We tried to build everything because the best way to understand something is to create it, and then the best way to continue to teach or to know it is to teach it.
Yeah.
I think that's the other big thing. It wasn't we'd go to a clinic or we'd go talk to a staff and we'd sit down, we'd go through their stuff, but we wouldn't ask for them. We don't want their playbook copy. We want to look at it and see what kind of concepts we can maybe integrate and then build something from that. We weren't ever a team that's like, I like this route concept, write it down so that we can run the exact same route concept because, we've got different formations and ultimately different players. So I think that was a very important part. But then, kind of that humble attitude again of just, I don't know everything, and saying that in front of your team, in front of the kids, like, hey, I don't have all the answers here. You guys are the ones on the field. If you see something, you need to feel comfortable enough to come and tell me what you're seeing. And, if the quarterback sees something, he can do something about it. I can't all the time. So, always kind of giving empowering the players as much as they can, empowering the other position coaches as much as they can, because ultimately, no matter how smart I am, if we've got 4 other coaches, they're still going to be overall smarter than one person. So, finding ways to use the full collective brain trust instead of just one is very, very important, and something that I think took us a long way.
Yeah. Well, I think an important phrase in life and, definitely football and more particularly coaching is just the term growth, right? You just want to always continue to grow, like I said, in life as a player and then ultimately as a coach. You want to continue that growth process. Where do you think you grew the most in those 2 years from year 1 to year 2? What was kind of your what was some of those things that you felt like you did way better that second time around as OC?
As an OC, I think the hardest thing in general is I think so many people wrap themselves up in a call sheet, and there's so many. I mean, you can go and find thousands upon thousands of different examples and people saying, well, here's what you need to have here and here's what you need to have here. And when I took over as OC, we moved to a tempo style offense. We wanted to play fast. And the kind of the reality that I quickly came to realize after that first season was, if we really want to have a tempo offense, I don't have time to look at a call sheet.
Yeah.
And so since then you still build it and you still kind of have one. But my goal every week to this day is that I know it well enough that I never look at it, that I have it mapped out and everything's done and it's ready, but it stays in my pocket. Usually if I'm pulling at it now, it's because something's not working and we're searching. But I think that was the first year. I think, as a tempo, we were really slow in a lot of ways for the first few games because you're trying to find things on your call sheet. You're like, all right, 3rd and 4, where's our 3rd and 4 section? We're in this section of the field. Where's this? As opposed to just memorizing everything that you can. Maybe you make your sheet in theory a little smaller, but you're able to memorize more of it. So then that way you can keep your process going, because 30 seconds in a game feels like 10. When you get into it and you've got the headset on and there's people in your ear and then there's players coming, and it's very hard to collect yourself and be looking at something. So the more that you can store up there, the faster and more efficient you'll be.
Absolutely. Now, we're going to transition to your current role, and I would like to talk about that actual transition phase. You had this very successful run there as an offensive coordinator, and you take the Pierre T.F. Riggs head coaching job over there in South Dakota. What kind of went into that thought process? I mean, you're having a very bright career as a collegiate offensive coordinator. You go take a head coaching job at the high school level. What was that thought process to make that transition?
Yeah, for us, it was we just gotten married our last year at Dakota State, and it was kind of one of those things where I wanted to know if I could do it. I wanted to know if I can be a head coach, because I'll tell you, it's not for everybody.
Right.
There's a lot of really awesome coordinators that are just not awesome head coaches. That doesn't mean they're a bad coach. It's a totally different role. And it was one of those things where I was 27 and I just wanted to know. I'm like, if I can do this, let's figure it out now. And if not, then let's know that now, so then we don't need to worry about chasing that later on. So we actually interviewed all over the place. It's probably a common theme for younger coaches that it's hard to get that first head coaching job.
Yeah.
I think I was a silver medalist or bronze medalist 7 or 8 times before we got the gold and actually got the opportunity to get this job. And I think overcoming the disappointment behind, when you get those silver medals, we're like, hey, you did really good, but we're going to go with this person, or you did really good, but we want someone with experience. And just overcoming that and not letting that deter you from continuing to push and continuing to try for it, because ultimately, that's going to get a lot of people, because you're going to get told no. Very few people are going to get the first job they apply for and interview for. So continuing to put yourself out there and believe in yourself and not change. Every head coaching interview I had was very different, and it was all way different than a coordinator interview. But continuing to believe in what you're doing and not change yourself to try and get a job, but to be yourself, because ultimately, if you get it, you also want them to want you and not what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how did you? How do I say this? How did you go back and maybe look at your performance in the interviews? And like, as you said, you don't go change who you are. You're going to be authentic and all that kind of stuff. But any of those interviews, did you walk back and look at me like, hey, you know what? I wasn't ready for that. I didn't know we were going to sit down with the administration, or man, I probably shouldn't have phrased that like that. Did you ever kind of have a self-evaluation after those deals to continue to improve yourself?
Yeah, I think the very first head coaching interview I had was completely different than I ever anticipated. So it was one of those ones you get done, you're like, I didn't prepare for a lot of those questions because I didn't, you don't
Right.
think about it. I think as a coordinator, you are so wrapped up in X's and O's a lot of the times and the scheme and all that stuff that you really don't comprehend the picture that is running the whole program.
Yeah.
Because as a coordinator, you don't worry about your budget. As a coordinator, you're not worrying about travel. You're not, you're not heading a lot of those different things. Where when you get to those questions, it's, well, shoot, yeah, I guess I've never done with a budget. So
Yeah.
that's a good question. I'd love to learn. And I guess you only kind of say those things so many times that you've really got to figure it out and have some plans made for them.
Yeah.
So some of those definitely helped or were shockers and helped me prepare better future on. And then at the other point, some of them are just, they're not fits. Some places they do need a more experienced person. Maybe it was a different situation and they need someone to kind of bring a little bit different stability. They don't want to mix it up quite as much. And, a lot of who I am and our pitches when we were interviewing was that, we're going to be different. We're not going to do things the way that anyone else does it. Our offense is going to look weird. Our defense is going to look weird. The way we run things is going to be weird. And you've got to find someone that matches with that too. So, that's okay. It's okay for people not to want that, but ultimately you just got to find the one that is a good match. And then when you get there, make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the interesting things is my brother's a high school coach here in Texas, head coach, and he was saying during kind of his interview processes, once again, he didn't get his first one. He had plenty of opportunities to practice. And one of the things that always stand out to me about his experience is he would always say, man, it's very little about football. It's about football, but it's very little about football. It's more about how you're taking care of your players, how are you taking care of the finances, what are the expectations of this, that, and the other. And football was such a minute part of it, and so I always thought that was super interesting because you would think the preparation would be the X's and O's, but they don't. He was like, hey, those people sitting on that board, they don't know what cover two is. They don't know if the football is stuffed or pumped. So, you got to sharpen those other tools. So that's great that you kind of said that. Now, your run at Pierre Riggs has just been absolutely amazing. 6 consecutive 11 AA state championships as a head coach. I think tying West Central for the most consecutive state titles in South Dakota history. And once again, relatively young. So you've done this in a short time frame. As I kind of look down at those records, all those state championships, they got started in your second year from 17 to now, right? Am I correct there? Yeah. So all state championships. So I look at that one year, that 2016, your first year as a head ball coach. You went 5-6. You lost in the semifinals. That had to be such a unique experience to kind of get the ball rolling. Just talk about that first year, the lumps you took, the growth you made, and how you got this thing in a position to just be a powerhouse. And I know work goes into it, so I hate using terms like that because I know it's not easy.
Yeah.
But how'd you get that ball rolling?
I think the most difficult part of that whole deal was, you don't get the results you want right away. And change is hard. Change is hard for everybody involved, the community, the kids, the team, the assistant coaches. Change is a very difficult thing. And again, selling yourself on, you want to be different. We want to do things differently. We want to be very unique in the way we do all these things. When you don't have that success right away, it's tempting to be like, well, let's go back to something safe. Let's go back to do something that's not what we said we were going to do, but it's safer, and by not doing that, by continue to just trust that change was going to take time and eventually was going to be embraced and we're going to get that, we really did start to take off, and a lot of that you get better, just like the first year as an offensive coordinator, you use that call sheet and you're overly dependent on it and that slows you down.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the same stuff happens your first year as a head coach. You're focused on a lot of things that you feel like make a difference on the field, but realistically, the biggest difference on the field most of the time comes from stuff off the field. When you can get your coaches all on the same page and your coaches are empowered to make decisions and everyone's working on the same thing, and working in the same direction, your coaches are better and that makes your kids better. And then once your kids buy in, then it starts to roll over and roll over and roll over. So, really that first year was just a lot of challenges to get that going in the right direction and, getting the coaches feeling comfortable and empowered to come to us and to bring things to us and to make things their own as much as it was ours.
So you get the ball rolling relatively quick. I mean, first of all, starting off at 5-6 is not a bad start by any means, but in comparison to how everything else has been with 6 state championships in a row, my question is, I've had some successes, some different places as a coach, and my lesson from all the success that I've had was it's hard to do it, but it's even harder to do it again. And that's what I found out. It was hard to win the second one or do it the second time. How have you been able to do it the second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth time there at Riggs?
And this will sound a little cliche for a lot of things, but we truly focus on that process. We don't always put up just a picture of the trophy and say, there's what we're going for. It's, win today, win tomorrow, win every day, keep focusing on it and one thing at a time. And I think the other big part about it is the team has so much ownership. We go camping actually for our first 3 days of practice every year, literal camping where kids stay in, young underclassmen will stay in a big tent. The upperclassmen will get a nice little air conditioned room that they can put sleeping bags in. And every year we have a senior meeting and the seniors will set the rules and expectations for the team and you get a good idea of the personality of the team and leadership as a coaching staff, and we try not to, we don't ever come in and say, here's what we're going to do this year. It's a conversation. And when the kids can feel like they're helping to set the rules, set the direction that they want to go, and you see what's important to them. And as a coaching staff, when you agree to back that up and hold them accountable for it and hold the underclassmen accountable for it, you get so much more buy-in from the kids because they know that this is theirs. This isn't coach is setting the rules. Coach is telling us what to do. This is okay. We're telling coach, this is what we want. This is what we want you to hold us accountable for. And this is what's important. Again, I'm a very firm believer that if you get everybody motivated working together, X's and O's don't really matter.
Yeah.
A lot of things don't really matter if you can accomplish that part of the culture, and the kids leading that culture is ultimately what I think allowed us to continue to turn over.
Yeah, that's funny you say that because I was scrolling through Twitter, I'm pretty sure, and just saw this quote, and most everybody's seen it, but I just happened to run across it here recently. But it was like, a team with no leadership is going to be a bad team. A team that's led by the coaches is going to be a good team. A great team, players are stepping in. They're part of that leadership. Coaches are a part of that leadership. And I was like, yeah, all the good teams I've ever been a part of, the players played a huge success in the accountability process and in the leadership process. And so that's great that you highlighted that. I hate that you said that already because I did have this question. I was going to say, you got 6 state championships. What would be one thing that you would say, we do this and this is super unique? And it sounds like the camp thing is pretty unique. Is there anything else that you would say, a lot of coaches I know aren't doing this and this is something that we do?
Yeah, I think the other big thing, and this is a little bit more a version of the size of our school. We're not always a 2-platoon team where, we've usually got a pretty decent amount of handful of two-way guys. So our offense is wristbanded out to tell the kids their jobs. It's not most of our kids don't know what the play is. They just know what their job is.
Okay.
And that makes it easier. So then, if you've got a kid who's backing up 2 spots, he doesn't know what he's doing. You just hand him the wristband and that tells him what to do. So, I mean, you're really coaching a verbiage and understanding what the wristband means as opposed to the whole play understanding, the quarterback being the lone exception of you need to know everything. But I mean, that's pretty unique. And that the beauty of that, again, reason for my love of offense is that your creativity is kind of uncapped in that regard. We can go into a game with 30 formations and the kids don't have to memorize anything because the wristband will tell them where to line up and it'll tell them what their job is. So, being able to really unleash the potential of the creativity has allowed us to be so good because the kids come in and if they have something they think would be really good, they'll come in and they'll tell us. And if it's good, we'll put it in. And if coaches see something that they think would be really good, they bring it in and we might put it in. And, nothing to this day, there's not been a thing that I think has benefited kids more than running their own play out of a formation they drew up and scoring a touchdown on it.
Absolutely.
Because then all of a sudden they're like, oh, that was me. That was something that we made together and it worked. So, I mean, it's kind of one of those things that it's almost a twofold success. It's not just the team scoring. It's also the team realizing that they can create just as much as the coaches can.
Coach, man, I've appreciated our time together here. I want to ask you about 30 under 30, your experience and just why any coach should apply for that opportunity. But before I ask that, I'm going to ask you a super tough question, and I want you to answer it however you feel fit because I don't want to get you in any trouble. But I think this is one of the things when we watch Nick Saban, Bear Bryant, these coaches that had a ton of success for a long period of time, and oftentimes you say, what keeps you motivated? What's next? What's going to keep you coming in an office and keep you hungry? You won 6 straight state championships, and like I said, tying was Central. So I know that's probably a carrot in front of you. And maybe not. Maybe that doesn't motivate you. But what's the next challenge? How do you keep this thing going? How do you stay energetic about kind of repeating this process?
I think that's one thing that's fun about the high school game is you're not recruiting your players. You're getting the guys that are in the high school. I guess you're recruiting the hallways. Right. That was one of our first goals was we want our 10 best athletes in the school to play football. And that wasn't the case necessarily 7 years ago. And I think it is now. But, I think the fun part of high school football is every year is truly very different.
Absolutely.
And seeing the kids come in as freshmen and sophomores, seeing them grow and progress and then go out as seniors. And then the last 2 years have been the first 2 years we've seen kids come back. Now that they've graduated high school, they've graduated college, and now they're back. And you get to go to their wedding. You get to go and see them in a job, and a couple of them have wanted to come back and coach them. And that seeing that kind of come full circle is it's very motivating to know that, when they come back and say, hey, this was a huge difference on my life. And this is how, we come back with all of our buddies and we joke about going camping for 3 days of football. Remember when the tents blew into the river and this happened? Knowing that you're making being a part of making all those memories is a very cool thing and, something that makes you feel like you're doing it right.
Absolutely, Coach. Great answer, man. Now, like I said, before I let you go here, 30 under 30, you're part of that, I think 2016, maybe 2015, 2016 class. And, I obviously wasn't there at that point in time, but I know it was still a very special deal, something that you hold dearly. Anytime I send an email out to, former guys, I mean, you always want to first to respond and be willing to help out. Just talk to us about your experience and why you think it's important that young coaches try to take advantage of this.
Yeah, I think that was very easily the cumulative, the most valuable learning experience that I've gotten as a coach. You get a lot of cool ones. You can go and clinic with different coaching staffs. You can go to the convention and you get a lot of good stuff. But, the intimacy and the personal connections that you made in that were fantastic. And, just a few, Glenn Crusoe was a speaker in that one. And a lot of the culture building stuff that we do, again, not necessarily carbon copied, but very similar to a lot of the ways that he talked about and the way that he ran. And it was one of those things that you sit there and you're listening and then you get the opportunity to talk to him afterwards for a little while. And you're like, yeah, that's what I need to do. That's a model that we've got to kind of look at and build off of. And, I think the creativity part came from David Shaw, was another speaker at that one. And David Shaw talked about how him and Chip Kelly tossed ideas back and forth. And at the time that absolutely blew my mind because they couldn't be more different
Yeah.
in the styles of offense that they run. And I'm like,
Right.
what could you possibly get? Like, you go as slow as you can, you put 5 tight ends in the game, and you're motion all over the place and run the ball, and
Right.
Chip Kelly's spread, throw the whole, everything as fast as you can. And, he's just like, yeah, we talk, once or twice a month, and we just exchange what we're doing. And I've stolen a lot of things from him. And, actually hearing how, yeah, he's using it this way, but I was able to use the same principle this way. And this is how it benefited us. I think that really changed my philosophy in my mind, and how that, I think a lot of times you might look at a flexible on offense and say, yeah, I mean, we don't do that. We're a spread team. There's nothing we can use there, but maybe you can.
Yeah.
Maybe you can adjust ways that you do things and find ways to utilize some different principles, schemes, or techniques, and in ways that you hadn't thought of. And, I think that goes to that lifelong learning and that growth. And, the only conversations you're not going to learn of are the ones you don't have, So, I think that was those were all very meaningful moments that I took out of that. I mean, there was plenty more. So, but those were 2 that really stick well in my mind.
Coach, I have enjoyed this 40 minutes with you here, and I really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us. Before I let you go here, and I don't know if you got a huge social media presence, but if you do, please share your Twitter account so guys can follow up with you, ask questions, and get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, my Twitter is at Steele, my last name STEELE_house. That's our Twitter handle. I've got Instagram, Govs Coach Steele. And probably more so on Twitter than on Instagram. But, and you follow us along, and I'm more than happy to share. And I love, one of the best things about this profession is, we're all in this together. Even if you play against people, you're doing the same job. You're making a difference to kids. And we're all doing the same thing, just in different ways. So reach out, love talking, love helping, and love learning. So please reach out. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And we'll make sure to link that in the show notes so guys can easily click it, find it, and get connected with you. And we gotta find a way to get you out to Nashville, get you out of South Dakota, let you see the beautiful Nashville convention here in 24, man. So we'll talk more about that. But once again, man, as always, I appreciate everything that you're willing to do for us at the AFCA, and happy we were able to connect today. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
All right, best of luck this fall.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset. If you heard anything on this episode that you would like to learn more information about, head over to afcapodcast.com, where you can find every episode and all of the corresponding show notes. While you're there, take a second to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for the show, please let us know by sending an email to podcast@afca.com. Make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at Inside the Headset and tag it when you share each episode. You can stay up to date with all things AFCA by following the @WeAreAFCA Twitter account. Every episode of Inside the Headset can also be found on your favorite audio streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If you are not currently a member of the AFCA, be sure to find us online at afca.com and apply to join over 10,000 NFL, college, and high school coaches from around the country who are striving to be the best they can be. With an AFCA membership, you gain invaluable access to the annual AFCA convention, the bi-monthly magazine, and the new and improved digital library, which contains thousands of videos and articles contributed by hundreds of current and former football coaches. You can also visit afcainsider.com to sign up for our free weekly email newsletter on the right-hand side of the screen. It comes out every Tuesday at lunch and is filled with great articles and stories written by many of the same coaches you hear on the podcast. It's geared to help you become a better coach tomorrow than you are today. Be sure to connect with me on Twitter at Coach Mario Price. And remember, the AFCA is not just an annual convention. It is an association that continually promotes education, guidance, and networking. But it is also so much more than that. The AFCA is about celebrating the past and educating the future. It is about developing great coaches who will produce great teams and even better people. So invest in your skill set and impact today by engaging with the AFCA.